Alright guys, welcome to Geometry 101, which is just the intro videos to our real geometry unit. So this is all basically what I would think would be prior knowledge, but I want to make sure that everybody has this stuff before we actually expect you to know it. So this is me going over a few basic things before we actually get into the real stuff. Now, it's very important that you watch these videos because this first one's going to be about vocabulary. Every unit is going to have some vocabulary words that we're just going to have to know before the unit begins. For some of you guys, this is going to be review. Just finish the video as fast as you can and move on. For other people, it's going to be new. Pay attention and make sure you answer the questions correctly. As you guys know, you guys can only answer a question one time for all of eternity. So do not guess. Make sure you go through the video and listen and then just answer the questions that I ask. If you don't know the answer after watching that video, part of the video, just rewatch it and then get it right. But make sure that you know these terms because I'm going to expect you to know the terms when you get to class. So the first thing we need to talk about is the coordinate plane. All right, this is going to be, I'm talking about it first, not just because it's important for this unit, but it's also important for all future units. All right, this is going to be the basis for IM1, is understanding the coordinate plane. So the coordinate plane as we know it was perfected by a French mathematician named René Descartes. All right, pretty sure I said that wrong, but René Descartes. As a result of him inventing it, the plane is sometimes referred to as the Cartesian plane or the Cartesian coordinate system. Now, the Cartesian coordinate system has two main parts, and you guys probably already know this. The first has two axes. First one's the horizontal axis, and it's just a number line that starts at 0 right here, and then goes from 0 to infinity in this direction, and 0 to negative infinity in this direction. So it's like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on, and it gets bigger and bigger as it goes to the right. And then here again, 0, but negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, so on, smaller and smaller in the other direction. So left, it gets smaller and smaller. Right, it gets bigger and bigger. But it's just a number line. All right, you can think of the x-axis, which is what this is called. The x-axis is just a number line. The y-axis is the vertical axis, and it's also just a number line. All right, it also starts at 0 right there, but it goes up and down instead of side to side. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. All right, so again, it's just a number line. It gets smaller and smaller though as it goes down, and bigger as it goes up. The Cartesian plane also has a key attribute. It's kind of weird, but it's broken down into quadrants. All right, there are 4 quadrants right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's numbered just like that. All right, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. In quadrant 1, all the coordinates are going to be positive, both x and y. In quadrant 2, the x coordinate is actually going to be negative, but the y is going to be positive. In quadrant 3, they're both going to be negative, and in quadrant 4, the x coordinate is going to be positive, but the y coordinate is going to be negative. And you'll see what I mean in a second here. And if you forget how to number these, just draw a little C, all right? Remember that you're on the coordinate plane, which starts with a C, and then you can just draw a C like this, and there you go. That's all you need to do. Just draw the C and remember how to number them. Start at the top and then draw the C. Now, we need to talk about naming points on the coordinate plane, all right? So if you have a point, all right, you probably need to talk about it, but it can be named and identified by its coordinate, and it has a unique coordinate. So a coordinate has a few rules, and we need to talk about those rules. So first, a coordinate is always going to be an x, y coordinate. X, then y. Never a y, x coordinate. Always x, then y. So the x coordinate is going to go first. Between them is going to be a comma. And it's always going to be surrounded by parentheses. All right, so for example, this coordinate right here, all right? This is going to be, first you find where it is in the x-coordinate, or the x-axis. So if you just draw a little line down to the x-axis, then you'll see it's at 4, all right? And this is not the only point that's at 4. This point right here above it, come on mouse, come on mouse. All right, well, anyway, this whole vertical line that this point is on is also points where x equals 4. All right, so the x-coordinate there is 4. The y-coordinate, you just go to the left there and see where it is on the y-axis, and you can see that it's at 2. So then you would say the coordinate there is 4, 2, like this. Now again, notice, it's not just 4, 2, that'd be like 42. It's 4, 2, and the whole thing is in parentheses. So that's a very important part of naming coordinates on the coordinate plane. That's 4, 2. Now, let's say another one, all right? This one is -2, 6, because it's got over to -2 on the x-axis, and then up to 6 on the y-axis. All right, so here's -2 right here. Again, this is not the only point where x is -2. It's also -2 here, and on the axis. This is just one point where x is -2. But any point, right, along this vertical line, we would say that x is -2 along that line. But this is just one of those points. That's x is -2, and then it's also y is 6. So again, that's not the only point where y is 6. It's also 6 here and here. Any point along this horizontal line would be a point where y equals 6, and we would use 6 as the y-coordinate. But this is a unique point in that it's the only point where y is not only 6, but also x is -2. So again, we're going to put it in xy order, so it's going to be -2, 6, in parentheses, with a comma. Now, what if the point is like this, where it's actually on the axis? Well, that just makes your job super easy, because now you don't have to figure out one of them. So the x-axis is actually the place where all the y-coordinates are 0, all right? So you guys can see that right here, y is 1, and right here, y is -1. So it makes sense that between is where's y is 0, all right? And all these points along the x-axis, y is 0. So then you got to figure out where it is on the x-axis and put that one first. So this is -6, 0. And then same thing for the y-axis. Just like the x-axis is the place where all the y-coordinates are 0, the y-axis is the place where all the x-coordinates are 0, all right? And the x-coordinates always go first. So that would be 0, -4, like that. So that's naming points on the coordinate plane. Now let's talk about points for a second, all right? A point is just a location on the coordinate plane. And usually you actually refer to these as by letters. You don't really refer to them as coordinates. And that's pretty much going to be true for our entire unit. Later on in the year, not too far down the line, we'll probably talk about them a lot using their coordinates itself, because we're not going to give them letters because there'll be too many. But for now, we're just going to talk about them with letters. So like, let's say we would name this point A. All right, this is point A. It's in quadrant 1, and you can see now that this has 2 positive coordinates. All right, that's what I mean by quadrant 1 has +4, +2. Any point in quadrant 1 will have 2 positive coordinates. This is point A. So now instead of saying 4, 2, I can just say that's point A. And this is point B, and that's point C, and this is point D. So what this does is it makes it a lot easier to talk about, rather than saying I want to draw a line between -6, 0 and 4, 2. I can just say I want to draw a line between C and A and make it happen. All right. And speaking of lines, all right. Well, first let's talk about this. Even if I took away the entire coordinate plane like that, it's still valid. These are still points, and I still have names for them. I can now refer to them just by their letter because I don't know where they are on the coordinate plane. So here they are on the coordinate plane. This is point A, this is point B. Again, now, because they have names, I can say, well, I want to draw a line between point C and point A. All right, and a line is just a straight, one-dimensional figure that has no thickness and extends infinitely in both directions. So if I want to draw a line between C and A, I just draw it like that. So now here's my line. You guys can see it goes on forever in both directions, and it's signified by that arrow and that arrow right there. So it not only goes through A and C, it goes on forever in both directions. And if I want to name the line, I would just call this line AC. And notice that it has a line above it, and it has 2 arrows on either side. So that's line AC. Well, maybe next time I don't want to talk about all the points that go through A and C. I just want to talk about the ones that exist between two different points. So let's talk about that with B and A right here, all right? If I want to talk about all the points that are between B and A, but not on either side of them, just between B and A, well then that would be a line segment, because that's part of a line that connects 2 points. Then it'll look like that. So this is line segment BA. And I write this almost exactly the same as line BA, but I don't use the arrows on the end. I just use a straight line above it with no arrows, and this would be line segment BA. And I could also name this segment line AB, and I could also name this line CA. Doesn't really matter, as long as you choose, for the line, 2 points that are on the line, and for the line segment you have to use 2 endpoints. So if there was a point E in here somewhere, I couldn't call this line segment BE, because that would just be between B and E. If I wanted to refer to this, I'd have to refer to it as line segment BA, and then use B and A, because those are its 2 endpoints. Now maybe, since this line doesn't go on forever in both directions, it doesn't go on forever in either direction, and this one does, it goes in both directions forever in both directions, maybe I want to start at one point, but then go off in the other direction to infinity. That's called array, all right? So let's use C and D for array. If I want to use C and D for array, I would start at C, and then go through D on and on and on forever, and put an arrow at the end to signify it does go on forever. So arrays have a starting point, which we're going to call a vertex later on, and then it has an ending point, or it has no ending point. It just goes on through another point, right? So like I said, this one has a little bit more leeway with how you name it, all right? It has to start with C, because C is its vertex. That's where it starts. But you could just use any point along the ray to do the other point. So this one, if I had point E right here, I could call this ray CE. But as there is no point E, I'm just going to call it ray CD, like this. And you guys can see this one is a ray, because it only has one arrow at the end. And it's ray CD. And I could not have called this, by the way, I could not have called it ray DC, because that would imply that it goes this way forever. It has to be ray CD. So unlike these two, it's got more specific naming, because you have to start with the starting point. But yeah, that's the end of the first video. You've made it through.